Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. First off, if you're watching with us right now, or if you're listening in a podcast form, we suggest go over to YouTube. You can find us at the On Tap Sportsnet YouTube page. Hit that little bell so you know when we go live. And we're going live on a emergency basis today, Mr. Juice, because my friend, first off, I'm Ron Luce, joined by the Juice man himself. Juice, where are you at? And I'll explain where I'm at because we are in two very different places than we normally are when we do shows.
Yeah, we're actually helping out the Sox guys because, they're not doing so hot over there. So we're giving a little bit of exposure back here. No, I'm live from the Buzz Cave today. So we helped the Buzz's in-laws move, and we're in the middle of moving dressers and totes and stuff like that, and found out that Dansby Swanson is a Chicago Cub, which, hell yeah, let's fucking go, as Scott Crawford's saying up there. My guy, excited. I just want to call out all the people who are jumping off the freaking cliff after they didn't get Carlos Correa. There's a plan, boys. It's just let's respect the plan. Let's trust the plan and trust the process. Going full Philadelphia 76er mode right here. And
trust the process.
Trust the process, man. Trust in Jed. He knows what he's talking about. And yeah, man, everybody jumped off the cliff, and there's gonna be some people who are upset with this signing who would rather like Correa, but hey, man, they got one of the big four, and there's something to be excited about.
Absolutely. And yeah, quickly before, what we're on the mic to discuss is welcoming Dansby Swanson to Chicago. Juice, I am currently on the campus of St. Xavier University. I just got done broadcasting a basketball game. And I literally I looked at the SID here. I told him, I said, I'm using the one room over there. I got to go do a podcast so we could get on and talk Dansby Swanson right away. While it's fresh, right? There's going to be a lot of people that wait until Monday, unfortunately, to talk about it. It's still going to be just as exciting, but we wanted to get some raw reactions out here right now. As Juice said, Dansby Swanson is a Chicago Cub, at least reportedly. Nothing is official just yet, but 7 years, $177 million is the reported contract. It is a full no trade clause as well, which good for him. He just got married. His wife, Mallory, is here in Chicago. She plays for the Chicago Red Stars of the NWSL. So it's a match made in heaven. They'll get to be together during their seasons in the same city. And he's fresh off coming back from his honeymoon. That's why he didn't sign, people. He didn't sign because he was on vacation with his now wife, celebrating the fact they just got married. So he's now a Chicago Cub, and we get to talk about it. And yes, Jeremiah, first off, thanks for joining, buddy. Yes, my hair's done really nicely. I actually look like presentable and cleaned up. I don't have my W hat on, and my beard's not in 18 different directions like it normally is when we're on Cubs on Tap. But Juice, just initial reaction, man. Like, what were your thoughts going through your head when you looked at your phone and saw the news?
Well, first I looked down and I was like, good, they got one of them. And then you start thinking about the behind the scenes, like how much, like you talked about, in the matter of, what was the timeline for this deal? Obviously, with the honeymoon and things like that, was that a factor in it? Was Dansby Swanson the guy all along? You start thinking things like that, and then you start to wait for the money to come in. And then when the money came in, I went, "That's awesome!" Like that really allows them to do a lot more with their baseball team in the future, because they're going to have to. They're very much going to be in need of high leverage bullpen arms, starting pitchers. You look around the infield and there's some stability with the middle of it now, but there's a lot of instability when it comes to the corner spots. So they may have to go out and definitely spend some more money in terms of maybe a Devers next year, or, a Shohei Ohtani to add to this lineup and this rotation would be, and they're allowed to they now have the ability to do that. And I think that's something that, this deal kind of does. And we talked, in depth about the changes in baseball rules and the emphasis it's going to put on defense. And I really truly think that out of all of it, this move allows them to make more moves in the future and add more 5-win players. I'm looking at Dansby Swanson stuff right now. Last year, 5.7 WAR. That's what you need to do as a general manager that's looking to contend. You need to add players that are between 3, 4, and 5 WAR, and then those guys help you win ball games. That's exactly what this move is about. It's great to see that it came in at that dollar amount, and Yeah, I'm excited. I think every Cub fan should be excited. They've done some really great things, I think, in this offseason, and this kind of adds to it, puts the cherry on top. We kind of talked about Bellinger, initially being that nice bounce back candidate. And maybe in the end, Jed looked at the market and said, I'm better off having two of these guys than just one of them. And I truly think that maybe that was excuse me, just had some pizza up there and I'm drinking some 312 Buzz has got the Bull City cans in house. I really truly think that it ended up being a slam dunk, getting two players that could help them win next year, especially since they have so many holes in this roster. Like if you look at like what the money was paid for the other guys, it had to be a lot of like, it was the last player that they're adding. Like if you're looking at the Padres, that's the move that like makes them over the top. It's
right.
like that were where these teams. Same with like the Giants. The Giants always seem to find these guys out of left field that help them win. So at the end of the day, I think Jed kind of looked at all the holes on the roster and said, we need more than just one guy this run. And let's throw some money at Bellinger. Let's throw some money at Dansby, and let's get better overall as a baseball team. And that's what they did today. They really put the cherry on top.
Yeah, and I think too, what on top of it does, Juice, and I'm gonna turn to a couple of comments here as well, because like I was calling a game. I didn't even know what happened until 30 minutes after it when I looked at my phone, and I had like 19 people had messaged me in various forms saying, oh, we got him, there you go. And I'm like, what? And I went and looked, and obviously the excitement. But as Jeremiah says, 177 million does feel like a steal, right? Because we saw the dollar amounts dished out to guys like Trey Turner and Xander Bogaerts, and most recently Carlos Correa. And then on top of it, like hearing this is kind of crazy from Jeremiah in the comments as well. It's saying Braves only offered him 6 years for $100 million. Like, I mean, he got what? Do quick math here. That's almost $10 million more per season from the Cubs for an extra year as well. Like, it's a good move, like you said, Juice, because there is still that financial flexibility. You look at this team, he's now the longest locked up player in terms of just pure years on the roster. But even guys that are making, right, like everybody, I think, can admit, right, you look at how many guys are in that 8 figures per year, right? How many guys are making 10 million plus on your ball club? Right now for the Cubs, it's not that many. Kyle Hendricks is one of them. I believe he's 13 million this year, if I remember correctly. You have Jay Hayes technically on the payroll for one more season, which whatever, that is what it is. But then outside of that, it's Stroh, Seiya, now Tyon and Bellinger, and Dansby, and that's it. Like, they have a lot of value locked up in a lot of guys. And I believe Ian made 10.6 this year. So even then, like, that's still really good value for a team that, like you said, Juice, still has the ability, looking ahead, obviously, to make moves in the future and still be financially flexible in that aspect, while still being able to get better as a ball club this offseason. And Dansby Swanson 100% makes them better. And Juice, the one thing I did want to pick your brain about and just discuss is immediately, it's a big deal when Jeff Passan puts it in his tweet. But he even said the Cubs have now one of the best middle infields in baseball, because this is going to move Nico over to second base, who's obviously a Gold Glove caliber infielder. And you have the guy who's the reigning Gold Glove winner at shortstop for the NL in 2022 in Dansby Swanson, now on the Chicago Cubs. I think if nothing else, that's the beauty of a move like this. Not only have you increased the power that's in your lineup, Dansby, by StatCast, had he played at Wrigley, I saw this the other day on Twitter. I don't know who put it out. I'm sorry. If I did, I would give proper credit. He would have hit 33 home runs this past season had he played at Wrigley. Wow. So they adjust it based on, where the balls land and things like that. So you added a potential 30 home run guy to your lineup, which probably in turn makes him a candidate for 100 ribbies. And then you also added a Gold Glove defender to a team that sorely needed defense. Outside of Nico Horner last season and Ian Happ and and pretty much Seiya Suzuki, this team defensively struggled. And that was a big reason why they lost a lot of games, and probably why they found themselves, especially early on in the season, so far out of that playoff picture, because we saw what happened. They turned it around in the second half. They pitched their way to a winning record in the second half, and they got just enough from the offense to be dangerous. Now, like you said, you've added a guy like Bellinger. You've added a guy who's a bounce back candidate. You add a guy like Swanson, and because of the dollar value, they can still go out and get a guy like Turner to come in and play third base for one season. You can still go out and get a Trey Mancini to play a platoon with Matt Mervis over at first base. Like, you can still go out and get some of these, like, they're not the sexy free agents necessarily anymore, but they're the guys, like you said, they're the guys that really help you win ball games, that you can come in and fill in. And a lot of them are probably going to come on shorter term deals too. So it's going to be something interesting to keep an eye on. I will say, so Flat Earth Poker here in the comments says Turner, Conforto, Hedges. Hedges wouldn't be a bad secondary catcher. Danny Jensen, also a good defensive catcher, is on the market as well. Former Toronto Blue Jay. I think that's a name that people should work out for. And Conforto, I saw a recent report that 4 teams are in on him. Cubs are not one of them. I would be very shocked to see Conforto. But Flat Earth Poker also says Suzuki kind of bad fielder. Suzuki won Gold Gloves in Japan, my friend. You have a Gold Glove outfield now. You have a Gold Glove middle infield now. I mean, this team defensively, especially up the middle, right? The one thing, Juice, I always tell people, you look at every single sport, they all have their own little differences and unique nuances. But if you are strong up the middle in every single sport, you are usually a strong team. And that is no different in baseball. And at least the guys that are behind the pitcher right now, that's how it's stacking up.
And defense travels, right? I mean, you could always play defense. It was kind of funny. When this happened, we were sitting in the car driving to the storage unit to get the last run of stuff out of the locker. And to talk with Buzz, it's kind of, we had the conversation of with his ball club, and if the defense looked so good because their pitching was so good. Well, it's vice versa too. Like, the Cubs are going to be able to play very good defense next year, and it's going to help the young pitchers. So this move not only helps your lineup, helps defensively up the middle, it also helps your pitching staff. And I think with a bunch of young arms and a bunch of guys out there who we don't know what we're getting out of guys like Kyle Hendricks or some of these younger names because they haven't had a full season in the big leagues. This only helps. And I think too, like, you look at his age, if you look how this contract's going to age as it goes, there's always value for guys who could play defensively, and they'll find a spot for him. He may not have 30 some home runs like we're hoping at the end of this contract, but I'll tell you what, he'll be one hell of a defensive replacement if it's a close game. Or, he'll be a great platoon guy for when guys like, maybe Ed Howard or, Hernandez are ready. And, by the time at the end of this deal, it's not going to look too bad because they're going to be able to use him in different ways and at different positions. That's the other thing too. As he ages, he may become an elite type of guy who could play third base for you. And maybe he's not providing the power per se, but with the DH, you can offset that. Remember, like in the old NL, when the pitcher batted, you kind of had to have power guys at those corners or at every single spot because you had to offset the fact that, the pitcher bats. Now you have that extra power bat in there. You can go that route to where maybe you have a guy who hits, 260, 265, but plays really good defense. Maybe isn't going to, drive in a bunch of runs, but he's going to provide that veteran leadership in the locker room, a guy who's able to, play defensively. And I think that this it just makes sense. We talked so much about guys like Correa and Bogarts and Turner. And yeah, it was unfortunate to miss out on those guys. Don't get me wrong. Like, they were all names that we had brought up. But then you go and you look at what Dansby Swanson is and what he could be. We're talking about a guy too who is improving throughout his career and kind of taking that ascension type. And like you said, in a bandbox kind of a park that Wrigley Field is for a lot of days throughout the summer and in the late spring, early fall, it looks like a good deal. And he's a guy who, as baseball changes, like I said, it's going to be only an asset that they have guys who can play great defense. And just to round it out, he helps in so many different ways on your team that it just makes sense for the dollar amount. And I think we talked about all these deals with these other guys, these 12-year deals, these 10-year deals, huge AVV for all of them. And all of them at the end were like, oh, that deal's going to look terrible at the end of it. This is the only one, I think, out of the four that I feel optimistic that the deal won't look as bad at the end of it as the other ones did.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just
100%.
makes sense. Like,
yeah.
At the end of the day, like, it almost like for us, I'm like, how do we just not see this? You know,
Yeah.
like,
yeah, no, it really does. Like, to your point, Juice, like that was something, you know, I work with a lot of the great, you know, students and faculty and, you know, staff here at Zavs when we do these games. And I was talking to a lot of them, all big baseball fans. We were all chatting about it. And that's what I said. I was like, this deal looks so good. Average annual value wise, it's right in line with what all these other guys got, right? It's in that like 20, you know, that 25 to 28 range, which is pretty much where everybody has been falling. 25.3 roughly is the actual like year by year dollar amount. It's a very rough, but it's roughly. Like that's a good contract for a guy that, like you said, plays incredible defense, brings a new aspect to your ball club. And this is another aspect, and this is actually coming from a Sox fan, but a good friend of the program, our boy Besnick, Mr. Sox Insane. He says, Swanson is durable too. This is something you and I have talked about, Juice, and we talked about with Joey and Tyler as well, is just how durable Swanson's been in his career. I mean, the last 2 seasons, he's missed 2 games. A dude played 160, or he played 160, I believe, in 2022, and I think it was all 162 in 2021, or it might be flip-flop. Nonetheless, he only missed 2 games the last 2 years. That is absolutely insanity. And like Joey Tucker says here in the comments, World Series champion player, dugout leader, Gold Glover, 25.96, clutch hitter, 7 years, not 10 plus. Absolutely. Like that comment nails it all in one swing because this deal just looks good. And honestly, I have a sneaking suspicion that like Dansby and Mallory are going to become like the new Chicago power couple after all this is said and done. Our friends, and now obviously, you know, really, I'm going to call them teammates here at OnTap Sportsnet, the Dingers crew, put out an awesome graphic with the little like People's Choice kind of, you know, emblem on it. It's their wedding picture. And it said
That's
Chicago's
awesome.
newest power couple. But it's true. You got two athletes here that are at the highest points of their sport too, right? Because Mallory plays for the women's national team as well. 2 of the best players in their respective sports are a power couple, and they're uniting here in Chicago. Man, it's gonna be really nice. And I said this, Juice, that I want to get your thoughts too on this part, because I said it to one of the guys I was working with today. I said that first double play that goes Nico to Swanson or Swanson to Nico is going to look so good because of how freakishly good defensively they both are. And that alone gets me excited. Juice, is it March 30th, March 31st yet? Like, I'm ready. Or March 30th? I'm ready. I know we got Cubs Con still coming up. I know we've got a lot of time before this happens. But son of a bitch, if I wasn't excited for opening day, I'm ready. I'm ready to be freezing my ass off in the left field bleachers watching the Cubs beat up on the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't know about you, man, but I am ready.
Dude, I am too. And like I'm gonna wait for that. I think I'm more excited to hear the pop at CubsCon for him.
Oh, it's gonna be so good.
And now, like a week ago, we were sitting here talking about, you know, and we were talking offline, like if they don't get one of these guys, you know, how bad is it going to be to sit, you know, at CubsCon and listen to Jed and listen to the Ricketts family?
Yeah.
Now I think the questions become even more interesting. It becomes,
you
know, what's the future plan for this? Is there going to be another run where next year we're major players in free agency again? And there should be. We absolutely should be. Regardless if they go out and they add 3 more names at outrageous dollar amounts, they're still going to be way below luxury tax. They are. They're going to have plenty of money to spend. And there'll be money coming off the books too, like we just talked about with Jason Hayward, which if I believe it's like $22 million. It's a great amount of money that they're going to be able to throw at somebody in the future, you know. So it's going to be an interesting kind of couple months. I think next year becomes interesting, especially with the add of the extra wild card team. You know, this team, if they see some arms that they have in the rotation take major steps forward, and Dansby Swanson, you know, has a season like he had last year, and Bellinger has a bounce back, who's to say that the Cubs in that division, which most are trying to lose, and they're going to play a lot of those teams that are trying to lose pretty often, who's to say that they don't snatch a wild card spot and get some much needed, you know, experience? Who's to say? And baseball's weird. You get in, spin the wheel, see how far you go. Who would have thought that the Phillies were going to be, you know, a team that is looking at, you know, a World Series win this year? Not me.
I mean, and speaking of that Phillies team, Juice, like that Phillies team was also a team that after we had just got done, I hate saying we. I'm going to preface that really quick. I try not to say we when referring to the Cubs. I know it's very easy to do that as a fan base, but I try to say the Cubs. But in this case, the Cubs, like we talked about it here on the show after, about how the Cubs, for the first time in the history of playing the Phillies, swept the season series ever. That one side fully swept the other in all, you know, both sets of series. And now, you know, I remember we were sitting there going, this team might miss the playoffs because you just got swept by the Cubs in your playoff run. And the Phillies ended up in the World Series. So like you said, Juice, who says you can't spin the wheel? I think if in any sport, baseball is the sport that it's truly the biggest spin the wheel, right? Because you can make the argument for all sports that like a team gets hot and you ride it. Of course, that happens in the playoffs all the time. You see it in the Stanley Cup playoffs. You see it in the NBA, you know, playoffs. You see it in the NFL playoffs. But baseball, it really is just who's the hottest team at that point. Because you go from playing in a 162-game marathon to playing essentially an 18 to 20 game sprint. Right. It becomes wildly different as a playoff contender. And like you said, look at what the Cubs did last year in the second half. They were one of the better teams in baseball in the second half. Who's to say that this team, you know, obviously health is a big thing that, you know, plays into that, and obviously all of that. But assuming this team predominantly stays healthy for the season, and like you said, you get that bounce back from Cody Bellinger. You get another quality season out of a guy like Dansby Swanson. You get guys like Nico Horner and Ian Happ taking another step forward offensively after two really good seasons for each of them. You get a pitching staff that can hopefully stay healthy and repeat what they did last year. You know, another step forward from guys like Justin Steele, Marcus Stroman looking like the Marcus Stroman that we know, you know, et cetera, et cetera. This team really, like you said, Juice, in an NL Central where you have two teams that are for sure trying to lose, in the Pirates and the Reds, even though the Pirates just had their like legitimate most expensive offseason in their franchise's history, which is comical. You have them just terrible. The Reds are full-blown rebuild. Milwaukee hasn't really added anything. They actually subtracted some meaningful power in Hunter Renfroe.
And they're tied down by a lot of money that's thrown into a guy that you don't know if he's going to ever be what he was when he signed the contract in Christian Yelich.
Yeah.
They really don't have flexibility to improve
the Pete Davidson stunt double.
Right.
Yeah, the Pete Davidson stunt double. Yeah, they don't have a lot of and that's a team that's not going to spend big money because they are truly a small market team and a second-class organization, and I absolutely hate that place. But anyway. You know, so like you said, you have 3 out of the 5 teams in this division that are probably no better than, I'm just going to use 75-win teams probably, realistically, unless the Brewers just somehow magically do something crazy next year. It's really the Cubs and the Cardinals competing for the division. And who's to say that, you know, yeah, sure, the Cardinals still have Goldschmidt. Is Goldschmidt going to put up another NL MVP season? You know, is Arenado going to still continue to be as good? Those are 2 aging superstars. You know, are they going to get their money's worth with Willie signing down there? You know what I mean? Like they also have a lot of questions too. And, you know, they lost their, you know, their steroid taker over at first base. You know, right. He's gone. Yachty's gone now. Like they are also really, in my eyes, closer to the Cubs than a lot of people I think realize. You know, there's still some holes, but like if the Cubs add a couple more impactful signings, not necessarily, you know, bank breakers by any means, but again, who's to say? You never know.
Is there a name that you think of right now that like it ends up being like the whipped cream that you look at and you go, I'll believe way more if they can get this guy into their clubhouse.
Is this off season?
Yeah, maybe on a short deal or on a longer.
Yeah,
maybe. I'm talking. I think the Cubs now are probably going to be in on 1, 2, and 3 year deals from here on out.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think we'll see long deals for any of the guys they're bringing in after this, considering where the market's at right now. But sure. Is there any name? I know we're getting some, and definitely comment in the comments, and let's hear some names. I see a lot of Justin Turner in there. I wouldn't mind it. That's a guy who proven playoff hitter. You're adding that to the lineup and experienced, and I wouldn't mind that. He's probably my guy. I know we've went back and forth on Trey Mancini, but I think now you bolster the parts of the lineup that you don't believe in. And I think third base is definitely, where you look at right now and you go, you wonder what production you're going to get out of that as it stands.
100%. And I think Turner would be a great move. I mean, he is probably the best third base option available. I think if they were to miss on Turner, two guys I wouldn't totally hate them chasing are Drury and maybe Longoria on like 1-year contracts wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Certainly an upgrade, I think, regardless, given what third base was for the Cubs for most of last season. But and we got our friend and buddy over at Dingers here, Jake, saying got to be Turner or Mancini. Here's a guy that I want to pitch to you, Juice. A guy that I just feel like over the course of his career has been severely disrespected by baseball. More just from like who sees him and who things like that. We got Mr. Carter Hawkins here in the comments. I don't think it's the Carter Hawkins, but you know what I mean. He said Drury would be great. Jansen, who I brought up at catcher as well. Platter Poker says Brantley is still out there. Yeah, Brantley at this point in his career probably more of that DH bat because he's a 300 hitter. I mean, that would be really cool to add. But Juice, what are your thoughts on a guy like Brandon Belt for first base?
Yeah,
he's out there.
That's a name that I've seen a lot of. He would make some sense. I really like the Drury idea a lot. Like, because I look at the amount, like what he was doing prior to being traded to the Padres, which
he was
absolutely, which he went to one of the worst hitting parks in the league. I mean, let's be honest, the Petco is not fun to hit at. And I mean, he was at, I'm looking at it right now. Park. I mean, OPS plus a 128 when you're looking at when he was in Cincinnati. I mean, you would take that from that position. It would be interesting to see if they could swing a trade for Jansen. That would be something that I think down the line that adds to the future. And when you look at the prospects that the Cubs have currently, and in that position, it's going to be a long kind of build, I think, until we have a cheaper option there. But I Brandon Belt I wouldn't hate, but I'd probably still err on the side of giving more at bats to Mervis, because I truly think that I believe in that slot for him for next year. He was in the plans for me. I wanted them to hedge a little bit with that, and I think maybe that maybe kind of hedges the bet a little bit.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, 100%. And I want to bring this comment up too. Hawkins, he's saying, I'm reading smoke around a hat for Jansen deal and then the Cubs signing Conforto. I think that would be interesting. It's going to be weird. And I want to bring light and a shout out to our friends. First off, Juice, you crushed it with the Dingers boys the other night announcing the big news. But went on to listen to the rest of that show, and I believe it was Jake who brought it up. They started talking about, guys to bring in and stuff like that. And, I think the nice thing going back, obviously, why we're on the mic today to talk about Swanson here, the beauty of having a guy like Swanson secured, and remember, full no trade clause, he ain't going nowhere. Like, he's a Cub for 7 years, unless he's getting DFA'd at the end of that contract. That's the only way he's not a Cub for the entire length of that deal. Swanson now gives you the ability at shortstop to not have to rush any of your shortstop prospects because you have him firmly in place. And that, I think, is the biggest piece, right? Because guys like Ed Howard lost a whole season because of injury. Guys like, some of the other names, right? Hernandez is still a long way away. Like, your top of the line shortstop prospects in the system right now are guys that are truly probably at least 2 to 3 years away, if not longer, right? Because not everybody develops at the same pace. Now you're secured there. That's the kind of interesting piece you have to consider with a guy like Hap, right? You got to figure out your outfield, because you have a lot more prospects for outfielders that are closer to MLB ready, right? Brendan Davis is knocking on the door. If once he's healthy, Canario, I think, gets a look this year at some point because of how great of a minor league season he had a year ago. You add that into the equation as well. It makes Ian Happ an interesting player, because do you move Ian Happ to kind of try and fill another hole somewhere, knowing you have a little more organizational strength in your outfield? So I'm very intrigued to see, but again, though, I think the Swanson deal at the core of it here today, Juice, right? We can say, okay, you filled a major hole. You fill a major hole just on the team period from a hitting and defensive perspective. Now it's okay, like you said, who are the couple of moves that Jed can go still make that fill in, even if it's short term, right? You fill in a little bit at certain voids, and then like you said, who's to say that this team isn't competitive in 23 with probably, wild card / division hopes on the line? You get that really necessary experience in the playoffs, and then you have 2024 with guys like Jordan Wicks and PCA and a lot of your top prospects now joining the conversation of being MLB ready. And then Juice, I saw something that everybody was, Buster Only put out a report. Do you mind if I go on a quick little rant?
No, please do. I love when you do.
Okay.
I'm comfy back here. Buzz is like
it's nice.
His setup here is something that it's like I'm running like the government from here.
You're the guy in the chair for the action here.
I mean, he's
got
shitty decoration, but I mean, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
everybody needs toilet paper in your head, or in your house, not your head.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that it makes for interesting conversation, right? Because we saw the report come out from Buster Only the one day, and he said that the Cubs are building in the model of the Rays and the Guardians, right? You develop pitching, you go get a couple, find bats, value bats, and you win through pitching and defense. Yes. But I think what everybody failed to see, because then you saw everybody, like you said, Juice, earlier in the episode, right? All the people that were jumping off the, Cubs aren't going to do anything. They're, diving into Lake Michigan, with a brick tied around their, ankle. Like, what ended up happening here is the Cubs, with this move, Juice, and with the timeline of where this move falls in, are building toward what we said you would. And that's building into the form of the Dodgers, because that is the team that you want to be in baseball. Because what they do, they develop talent well. They ship guys off when they need to go fill voids via trade. And then they pay the guys that they truly want to keep. And that's what you want the Cubs to become. You want them to consistently have talent in the pipeline. Like, everybody, Juice, if you told me, like, I read that report and I was like, good, that's what I want them to do. Because I think a lot of people fail to realize, Juice, and this is where you get the Cubs fans, because they're in Chicago and they're in their little bubble, versus the true baseball fans. The Dodgers built in the model of the fucking Tampa Bay Rays. Friedman came from Tampa to run the show in LA. The only difference is instead of a $100 million payroll, he got to have a $250 million payroll. That's the difference. And you see what they are. They're a consistent contender year in and year out. This is step one of the Cubs saying, we are going to exactly what you and I have been screaming from the rooftops about all season, Juice. We were talking about this shit back in like late July. You want to build in the model of these Moneyball teams, but throw money behind it. And then Moneyball is, money and more ball. And then you are a consistent big time player constantly. And a couple of interesting little notes in here as well. We got some more signing news. Looks like the MLB's busy today. JD
Yeah, you figured
Martinez
it
is
would
going to
open
the
up after a
Dodgers.
lot of these guys, being moved on. Now it's going to be, since it's $1 million deals for most of these guys, I think it's going to move quick.
Yeah, a lot of short-term deals. I think we're going to see a lot of shit pop off in the next 48 to 72 hours. But Martinez going to the Dodgers on a 1-year deal for $10 million bucks. Jeremiah reminding everybody Hedges signed with the Padres, the Pirates, the Pirates. But yeah, okay. And going back to my point, and see, this is why I love you guys in the comments. You guys are absolutely fucking killing it today.
Sometimes the comments is better than our show. Let's be honest.
100%. It's the comment section of Cubs on Tap is such a good time. Like, everybody and their brother needs to be a part of it because it's so fun. But like Joey Tucker said here, Guardians are a consistent contender. That's why the Cubs got Hawkins. Absolutely. That's why they went out and got him. That's why they went out and got Dan Kantrovitz, who had experience in Oakland and in St. Louis. St. Louis is not a team that typically spends a ton of money. They identify their couple of core guys to spend money on, and then they build through the system. Like, that's good. You want to have that framework because that's how you become successful. And how did all those teams become successful, Juice? They played good defense and they had good pitching. And just like you always say on here and how you like to build your teams, the Cubs are building in that model. And I'm telling you right now, I think the defensive upgrades alone this season, bats be damned. The defensive upgrades alone, plus what the Cubs should get from their starting pitching, assuming everybody stays healthy, like they did not manage to do at the beginning of last season, you're looking at a team that absolutely is going to make the most noise from 2022 to 2023 in terms of biggest jump in difference. I don't think there's a single team in baseball that has done things this offseason. Like, right, all the big players for most of these guys were teams that were adding to go get it. Like, the Cubs are that first team that are like, we were bad last year, but we're looking to change that ship around really quick and have eyes on the playoffs in 2023.
Yeah, and two, like, I think the thing that like kind of pisses me off is after we missed out on the 3 big names, I don't know if anybody noticed, I went kind of Twitter silent because it took a lot for me to not just jump in on people's comments who were essentially old man yells at cloud.
Oh, 100%.
At the end of the day, the Cubs did what was right for their franchise and did what's best for the future too. Because like you said, they're going to have to build this thing out to not just be successful this year, but to be successful over a span of a bunch of years. And that doesn't just happen in one free agency or one season worth of work. You know, they absolutely had a lot of holes to fill. There was a lot of organizational assets that were moved out, you know, during the runs of the 2016. And what kind of pissed me off is like watching some of these videos from, you know, other these markets and watching some Cub fans come out and tweet and say like, oh, well, you know, they just don't care. They absolutely do. They just wanted to do what's best for the future. And they absolutely probably sat down with Carlos Correa. And Carlos Correa probably said, I'm not signing for anything under 12 years and an asinine amount of money. And at that moment, you weigh the pros and cons of a deal like that. We're talking today about how this deal is not going to look bad at the end of it. For damn sure, 3 to 4 of those years on every single shortstop that went before Dansby Swanson is going to look horrible. Those are not guys that are ahead of him that are like Dansby, who are going to be able to play defense, who are going to be able to steal bases, who are going to be able to, you know, be guys who absolutely, you know, take the field every day. He's absolutely the mantra of success and being and taking the ball, not taking the ball, but being a guy who absolutely plays every day. And that's valuable in itself because you've just added another, you know, I think I said it earlier, another 5.7 win player. And it doesn't bog down your budget for the future. Because there's a lot of great names that are probably going to be free agents next year. And some of these teams that just spent a bunch of money aren't going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to shell out the cash for a Shohei Ohtani. And now, because the Cubs are at this point of the rebuild, it just makes me – I always say that, like, it's when you build these teams, you build for the future, you build for future success, and you don't pay for next year's contract or the next year's deal of the contract. You pay for the whole thing. No matter what, you pay the whole deal out. That's exactly what's going to happen. And this one doesn't hurt. It absolutely doesn't. And they're not at that place right now where they're going to be in the top 5 of World Series contender for betting odds. They're just not. So before the offseason was even over, there were too many people who were screaming that this is a disaster. And why should we spend money? Well, now you look like an idiot. You absolutely do. And we sat here and we said, yeah, it sucks. We didn't get Correa. But the offseason isn't over. There was still a great player in Dansby Swanson out there to still be signed. And Jed got on the phone and he made it happen. So
sure did.
I think it's funny to sit and have these conversations, and everybody tries to be, the right person. But let's be honest, man, like, we're no better than anybody else. We're just here watching these games and watching this team as Cubs fans and watching and being frustrated or being happy. But I'll tell you what, like, there's some genius baseball minds that we've just talked about who are running this team, and I'll stand behind whatever they do because they know how to build it. There's too much brain power on that staff to fail because they'll figure it out eventually. They may fail in certain signings, and they may fail in certain guys that they try to bring in. Shit, who knows? Cody Bellinger may be a disaster next year. But you know what? It's a one-year deal. Doesn't matter. At the end of it, you move on.
Yep.
And you know what? It's going to be just fine. So the minute that anybody wants to just jump up and down and throw anything at, the Ricketts family or Jed and Carter, just take a deep breath. And I hate to say it, and I hate to be the guy who brings up a hated rival in the NFC North for the Bears, but as Aaron Rodgers says, relax. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah, 100%. And Juice, I caught a lot of flack for writing the Just Breathe article after Correa signed. I got a lot of flack. My ats are still open, people. Are you still not feeling okay? Get shit out of here. Again, hindsight's always 20/20, Juice. And everybody likes to overreact in the moment when something bad doesn't go their way. It's the human nature.
I'll just say this.
Today,
I hope all those people who are throwing videos up saying I'm not going to Wrigley Field, I hope you don't. Don't go.
Yeah. There's more room. There's more room for us and all our friends then to go and rule the bleachers with our friends like Mai Tai and Bleacher Jeff and Danny Rocket and others. We'll be out there. We'll be having fun with those guys. And you don't want to be a part of it, that is very okay. Juice, one quick thing I wanted to add here. Again, you guys are absolutely crushing it in the comments today. Appreciate every single one of you jumping in on the conversation. And I'm actually so many comments. I'm actually having issues finding the comment that I wanted to bring up.
I've been following myself.
That's always a great thing. Always an absolute great thing. But here it is. Yeah, from Carter saying defense and don't forget base running. Cubs were an awful base running team last year. Absolutely. And as I brought up a little bit earlier, base stealer and Bellinger and Swanson greatly improved power, defense, and base running. Absolutely agree. Like, this team is getting better, and Ron, I think the Swanson is.
Ron, that's baseball now. It's not just baseball. The home run derby anymore.
Nope.
It's not going to be that next year.
I think, and I've been saying it, Juice, probably since we started thinking about rule changes back in September. I think the Cubs are going to be one of the top teams in terms of running. They were one of the top teams in 2022 in terms of stealing bags and running. I think 100% they're going to swipe a lot of bags next year. It's going to be a lot of fun.
They'll have to remember Wavin Wendell Kim? Remember him at third base coach, Wavin Wendell? Get him back. I want him waving.
Yeah, get him back. We need the wave coming. It's going to be good. Juice, any final thoughts, my friend? Dansby Swanson is a Chicago Cub.
No, great for him. It'll be interesting. Like you said, I like the power couple part of it. I think that's an interesting tidbit. That also opens up some more opportunity for CubsCon, I think. Maybe you get her involved in it a little bit. Remember how they used to do Chris Bryant and his wife used to do like the Cubs marquee kind of stuff and questions, things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe we get to learn a little bit about Dansby. And that also opens up a great point that I know they've been looking for guests for the Ian Happ's podcast, Compound. For a live guest. Dansby Swanson be a great person to put on there. I want to learn a little bit more about Dansby.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be a lot of fun too, because the Chicago sports landscape will also get to learn a lot about Mallory and learn both about we'll get to learn a lot about two world-class athletes that are playing in our great city. And I think that's super, super exciting. Yeah, man, Juice, I'm right there with you, buddy. My final thoughts. I'm just happy. I'm a little relieved. I'm more excited now. There's a lot of mixed emotions, all of them positive though, about Dansby Swanson being a Chicago Cub. He's going to look great in Cubby blue. I've already seen the edits. He looks like a natural fit coming to Chicago here.
Also,
and hey,
real quick, pull this comment up, Bay versus baseball player. I want to thank Jeremiah. Gold star tonight. Pretzels for you, buddy.
Yeah, gold sticky star for Jeremiah.
I was thinking, I was like, I wonder what that name of the segment was.
Bay versus
baseball. Pretzels for you, buddy.
Pretzels for Jeremiah. Juice is sending out pretzels for Christmas for anybody that didn't know. So be sure to keep in tune with that. But yeah, man, I mean, it's absolutely awesome. It feels good. What a week or two here for Dansby, right? He got the start, really got to start his career. He gets drafted by the Diamondbacks. He gets traded to the Braves. He gets to play in his hometown team. He grew up in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is not far at all from Atlanta. Plays there, wins a title in Atlanta, and now just this offseason, he gets to finally marry his fiance. They go on a beautiful honeymoon, and right when they get back, Dansby inks a deal for some life-changing money. So good for them, and what a hell of a way to cap off a winner for Dansby and Mallory. So it's really cool. And again, super excited now. I mean, it's going to be great probably hearing a lot from Dansby at CubsCon. And like you said, Juice, I'm also ready to learn more about the latest Chicago Cub. And it's going to be a lot of fun. But Juice, before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is the official, one of two official now podcasts to covering the Cubs here for On Tap Sports. Do be sure to go check out our friends over at the Dingers podcast. We are both now under the On Tap umbrella. We're going to have a lot to do with them this season. It's going to be a lot of fun. I was talking to Mitch a little bit, Juice, the other day, and it sounds like we might have some Dinger friends at CubsCon with us too.
Hell yeah. That might be
super exciting.
If you've been in the comments, you're going to CubsCon, meet up with us. I've already said anybody who comes up and listens to the show says what's going on to Juice and Ron and Joey. I know Joey will be with us. Maybe Tyler. We don't know yet. But if you guys come up, it's a beer or a double bourbon on me, because I know Scott he likes his double bourbons. So.
Absolutely. It'll be a good time. But again, be sure to follow our friends over at Dingers. They are at Dinger Cubs on Twitter. We are at Cubbies on Tap on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Luce on Tap. Juice is at Juice on Tap. You know the drill. At Joey Knows Nothing. At Teddy Freddy 270 for Tyler. And all the other great people that help us on the Cubs side. Rob Wegley wrote up the Dansby news article. That's a great piece if you haven't read it as well. Rob Wegley is a hell of a writer for us. And we got him on the Cubs side of the house now doing stuff with us, not just Bulls. You know the drill. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks. You see them all hanging behind Juice. And yes, even the South Side get covered. Our buddy Buzz. And Tony and Johnny and Steve do a great job covering them as well. So if you have friends that like the White Sox, send them over to our friends over at Sox on Tap. But once again, Juice, the On Tap Sports Network, go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. OnTapSportsNet.com and at OnTapSportsNet on social media. Juice, happy Saturday to you, buddy. What a great feeling to get on here and talk about Dansby Swanson now being a Chicago Cub. And what do you say, bud? We get out of here the only way we know how?
Extra fuck the Cardinals today, my friend.
Absolutely. And an extra let's go Cubbies.